My name is Allison Carter. I'm 34, mom of 2 amazing kids, Emma 7, who dreams in glitter and musicals, and Lucas 4, my little dinosaur. I run a small online stationery shop from home, designing wedding invites and journals, while juggling school drop-offs and bedtime stories. From the outside, my life looks simple. A loving husband, 2 healthy kids, and a cozy house filled with laughter. But behind it all was a daughter still craving her parents' approval, still trying to be good enough, until the day they told me my children weren't welcome at their Thanksgiving table. And in that single moment, everything changed forever. I always thought family was supposed to mean unconditional love. But that illusion shattered the day my own parents told me my children weren't welcome at their Thanksgiving table. I spent my life bending over backwards to please them, desperate for scraps of approval they handed so easily to my brother. But when they tried to cut my kids out while still using my money behind my back, something inside me snapped. I chose my children over their toxic expectations. I walked away and watched them crumble without the daughter they once took for granted. For the first time in my life, I realized family isn't who raises you. It's who loves you without conditions. I always thought family meant unconditional love. Growing up, I used to imagine that one day, no matter where life took me, I'd always have a place to return to my parents' house, warm with the scent of cinnamon and fresh coffee. The faint hum of my dad's old radio, playing classic rock in the kitchen. My mom bustling about with her floral apron, her hair pinned up just so. It was a fantasy stitched together from fleeting moments in childhood memories I clung to, like a lifeline, even when the reality didn't quite match the picture. Because in reality, love in our house always came with strings attached, invisible threads tugging at me to behave a certain way, speak a certain way, achieve certain things, to earn a smile, a nod, a rare. I'm proud of you. And if I couldn't live up to it, well, there was always Daniel to fill the void. My older brother was the golden child, the valedictorian, the college baseball star, the flawless family man with 2 polite, quiet sons and a perfect wife who baked muffins from scratch. In my parents' eyes, he could do no wrong. Meanwhile, every choice I made, from marrying young to starting a small online business instead of pursuing corporate law, felt like another mark against me on an invisible scoreboard I never even signed up to play. Still, I tried. God, did I try. Because as much as it hurt, I still wanted them to be proud. I wanted them to see me the way they saw him, especially after I had my kids, Emma, with her wild curls and stubborn creativity, and Lucas, my sweet little tornado who could brighten any room with his goofy grin and fierce hugs. Every Thanksgiving, we'd load up the car before sunrise and drive the 2 hours to their house, stopping for gas station coffee and donut holes along the way. Emma and Lucas would sing off key Disney songs in the back seat, while Liam, my husband, teased me about how nervous I always got before we arrived. "Relax," he'd say, resting a warm hand on my thigh. "It's just your parents." But it never felt like just my parents. It felt like walking into a performance I hadn't rehearsed for, hoping this time I'd get my lines right. Still, there were moments I cherished. Watching Dad carve the turkey with exaggerated flair while Emma clapped her hands, Lucas giggling at his grandpa's silly faces. Seeing Mom's eyes soften for a fleeting second as she watched her grandchildren run wild in the backyard, sitting on their worn leather couch after dinner too full to move Emma curled against me, Lucas asleep in Liam's arms. For those brief hours, it almost felt like we were the perfect family I had always wanted. Almost. Because beneath the gravy boats and polite small talk, there was always that sharp edge. The little digs about how loud my kids were, how exhausted I looked, how Daniel's wife never seemed to struggle the way I did. Comments tossed out casually with a smile, like they weren't tiny knives, slicing through my confidence. But still, every year I went back. I showed up. I brought the pumpkin pie from scratch and the maple roasted carrots they loved. I dressed my kids in their best fall sweaters, brushed their hair until it gleamed, and whispered reminders to use their inside voices to say, please and thank you to be good. Because deep down I still believed that if I did everything right one day, my parents would look at me the way they looked at Daniel. One day they'd say, we're proud of you, Allie. You're doing a good job. And so, as Thanksgiving crept closer this year, I felt that same mix of dread and fragile hope stirring in my chest. I imagined Emma twirling in her little velvet dress, Lucas helping Grandpa feed the backyard squirrels, my mom teaching them how to roll dough for her famous cinnamon rolls. I pictured the long table set with gold-rimmed plates, the smell of roasted turkey and cloves, filling every corner of their old craftsman home. For all the tension that lingered between us, these traditions were stitched into my soul. They were a part of who I was. So when my phone buzzed that Wednesday afternoon, and I saw my mom's name flashing on the screen, a warmth bloomed in my chest. Maybe she wanted to plan the menu. Maybe she needed help with decorations. Maybe she wanted to hear my ideas this year. I didn't know it then. But within the next few minutes, that fragile hope would shatter completely, and nothing about family would ever feel the same again. My phone buzzed against the kitchen counter, jolting me out of my daydream. I glanced at the screen, and there it was, Mom flashing in bold letters. Instinctively, my heart gave a little jump. For a fleeting moment, warmth bloomed inside me, spreading from my chest to my fingertips, like the first sip of hot coffee on a cold morning. Maybe she was calling to ask if I could bring my maple pecan pie again this year, or to tell me how excited Dad was to see Emma twirl around the living room in her velvet dress, Lucas chasing her with his toy dinosaurs clutched in his chubby fists. I imagined Mom's voice, that rare, gentle tone she used only when she felt sentimental, telling me how much she missed the kids' laughter filling their quiet house. I wiped flour-dusted hands on a dish towel, glancing at the organized chaos around me. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon and vanilla from the cookies I'd baked earlier. Emma and Lucas were busy constructing a pillow fort in the living room, their giggles drifting down the hall like soft bells. For a moment, everything felt right. Like maybe this year Thanksgiving would be different. Maybe we'd sit down together and it would feel whole. I answered the call, unable to hide the hope in my voice. Hey, Mom, what's up? Her tone was unusually light, almost rehearsed. Hi, honey. We need to talk about Thanksgiving this year. I smiled, leaning against the counter, picturing her bustling around her kitchen, with her floral apron tied tight, scribbling grocery lists with her gold pen, pulling down old recipe cards smudged with butter and cocoa. Of course, Mom. What's the plan? Already I could see it in my mind, their house glowing with amber light from the chandelier above the dining table. The smell of roasted turkey and cloves, swirling through every room, the faint crackle of logs in the stone fireplace. I imagined Emma helping Grandma roll out dough for cinnamon rolls, flour dusting her curls. Lucas perched on Grandpa's knee as they watched the Thanksgiving Day parade on TV. Dad would tease Liam about his carving skills. Daniel's boys would sit quietly at the table with their perfectly parted hair. And my kids, well, they'd probably burst into a spontaneous Disney song mid-dinner, making Grandpa laugh so hard he'd nearly choke on his stuffing. And Mom, maybe this year maybe she'd look at them with that same proud softness she always reserved for Daniel's kids. The thought sent a sweet ache through my chest, because despite everything, despite the constant comparisons, the little digs about how exhausted I always looked, how Daniel's wife never seemed to struggle the way you do, Allie, despite all of it, I still wanted to be there. I still wanted my kids to have these memories. I still craved these moments of forced together. Family hoping that if I showed up enough times, if I did everything just right, one day they'd see me. Really see me. Mom let out a small sigh on the other end. I pictured her standing in the kitchen, twisting the phone cord around her finger, glancing at the stove, where something was simmering. Well, this year we're thinking of doing something a little different. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay optimistic. Different how? She paused just long enough for a chill to creep up my spine. We're thinking of keeping it smaller this year. Just adults. Something more intimate. I blinked her words, taking a moment to register. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. Oh, so no kids at all? Another pause. I could hear her swallow as if she were the one being put in an uncomfortable position. Well, no. Not exactly. I felt a knot begin to twist low in my stomach. What do you mean? She sighed again, this time more heavily, her tone shifting from faux casual to weary exasperation. Allie, we love your kids. We really do. But they're just, energetic. And honestly, we just feel like it would be better if you left them with a sitter this year. It's only one dinner. I gripped the edge of the counter, grounding myself. The image I'd built up my daughter twirling under the dining room chandelier. My son giggling as Grandpa tickled him. It cracked at the edges. So just my kids, I asked quietly. What about Daniel's? The silence that followed was deafening. Then Mom cleared her throat. Daniel and Sophie are bringing their boys, of course. But you know how well behaved they are. They're just quieter, more refined. It's easier to have them at the table. A wave of heat flushed through me. My ears rang. It felt like someone had slapped me, like the floor had been ripped out from under my feet. They're just children, Mom. I managed my voice tight. Emma is 7. Lucas is 4. Of course they have energy, but they're sweet, and they love you. She clicked her tongue softly, the sound cutting deeper than any harsh word. We're just trying to have a peaceful evening. It's not personal, Allie. Not personal. The words pulsed in my temples like an insult, disguised as concern. I clenched my jaw, staring at the cookie crumbs scattered across the counter. My kids' giggles echoed from the living room, so pure, so full of life, so blissfully unaware that their grandparents were dismissing them like an inconvenience. But in that moment, standing in my quiet kitchen with the late afternoon sun slanting through the windows, the smell of cinnamon and flour still lingering in the air, I still wanted to believe there was a way to fix this, a way to keep my parents' love and protect my children's hearts at the same time. I didn't know it then, but that desperate hope was about to be torn apart completely, leaving behind a woman who would never look at the word family the same way again. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I stood there gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, staring out the kitchen window at the golden afternoon light slanting through the maple trees in our yard. Emma's laughter rang out from the living room, followed by Lucas squealing with delight as their pillow fort collapsed around them. And in that single fractured second, I felt my chest split open. I wanted to believe I had heard her wrong, that maybe I had misunderstood her words, because this wasn't how Thanksgiving was supposed to feel. It wasn't supposed to feel like rejection, like betrayal, like watching the illusion of family shatter into sharp little pieces that cut into the softest parts of me. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. Mom, are you really telling me my kids aren't welcome? She let out a sharp sigh as if I were the one being unreasonable. Oh, Allie, don't be dramatic. It's just one dinner. You and Liam are still invited, of course. My chest constricted painfully. I almost laughed at the absurdity. They wanted me there, me, their daughter, but not the two little people I loved more than life itself. I felt my eyes burn with tears I refused to let fall. How can you say it's not personal? They're children. Your grandchildren. Her voice grew clipped cold now that I wasn't immediately agreeing. Don't make this difficult. We just want a peaceful evening. Daniel's boys are so calm. You know that. And there it was. The truth that had always lingered beneath every forced smile, every backhanded compliment, every moment of silence when my kids squealed too loudly at the dinner table. They weren't good enough. Not like Daniel's kids. Not like Daniel. Never like Daniel. I clenched my jaw so tightly it hurt my mind, spiraling through memories I'd buried under excuses. The way they showed up for Daniel's son's soccer games, but never came to Emma's dance recital. The way Daniel's kids got the newest tablets for Christmas, while Emma unwrapped a clearance art set, and Lucas got clothes 2 sizes too big for when he grows. I felt something break inside me, but still hope clung to the edges of my heart like a dying ember. Mom, please. My voice cracked despite my best efforts. They love you so much. They'll be so excited to come. They'll be good, I promise. I hated how desperate I sounded, like a child begging for scraps of affection. She was silent for a moment, then exhaled sharply. Allie, I've made my decision. If you can't respect that, then I don't know what to tell you. A long, heavy silence stretched between us. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the rustle of Emma's feet, as she danced down the hallway, singing off-key about princesses and dragons. Finally, I spoke, my voice a whisper. No, Mom. If my kids aren't welcome, then neither am I. There was another pause, then her voice came back, sharp-clipped, irritated. Suit yourself. And just like that, she hung up. I stood there staring at the phone, feeling like the floor beneath me had vanished. My breath came in shallow gasps as I placed it back on the counter with trembling fingers. The kitchen felt unbearably quiet now, the fading warmth of my earlier hope turning cold and heavy in my chest. I closed my eyes, fighting the tears burning behind them. I had spent my whole life bending myself backwards for their approval, telling myself that if I just did everything right, if I was good enough, obedient enough, helpful enough, they would love me the way they loved him. But in that moment, all the illusions I'd carefully constructed over decades crumbled into dust. My mother had made her choice, and somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that it was time for me to make mine. I stood there for a long time after she hung up, staring at nothing, my phone lying silent and lifeless on the counter. My heart thudded dully against my ribs, each beat echoing like a question I didn't want to answer. Why did it still hurt so much? I knew this was who they were. Deep down, I'd always known. But for so many years, I had buried that truth under excuses. They're tired. They're old-fashioned. They don't mean it like that. One day, they'll see the kids for who they really are. One day, they'll see me. But as I stood there in my quiet kitchen, the late afternoon sun casting golden slants across the floor, I realized something with startling clarity that day was never coming. Because it was never about my kids' behavior. It was never about noise or calm dinners or wanting a peaceful evening. It was about control. It was about the fact that in their eyes, Daniel's kids were better, quieter, easier to mold, more like them. And mine were wild and honest and bright with life. They didn't fit the pristine picture my parents wanted to show the world, just like I never had. That truth settled into my bones like an anchor. Heavy, yes, but solid, real. For the first time, I saw it all with unclouded eyes the Christmas mornings when Emma unwrapped dollar store art supplies while Daniel's kids got drones and brand new bikes. The birthdays where my mom would call late in the evening, apologizing that they couldn't make it this year, her voice breezy and unconcerned. The way they praised Daniel's wife for her baking, her parenting, her career, while they told me I looked tired lately, as if exhaustion was a moral failing. And suddenly, something inside me shifted. The grief didn't disappear, but it hardened into something sharper, stronger. Resolve. Because if I let them get away with this, if I showed up to that dinner without my children, smiling politely while they played happy family with Daniel's boys, what was I teaching Emma and Lucas? That love is something you have to earn by being quiet enough, calm enough, good enough, that being themselves wasn't acceptable, even to the people meant to love them. Unconditionally. I thought about Emma twirling in her princess dresses, glitter smeared across her cheeks, singing her made-up songs at the top of her lungs. I thought about Lucas, messy-haired and bright-eyed, hugging my legs every morning and telling me, "You're the best mama ever." They deserved better than grandparents who only wanted them when it was convenient. They deserved better than a mother who taught them to keep shrinking themselves to fit someone else's standards. And for the first time in my life, I realized I deserved better too. I wiped a tear from my cheek and drew in a shaky breath. The world outside the window was glowing with the soft light of early evening, and I could see Liam's car pulling into the driveway. The kids squealed and ran to the door, shouting, "Daddy's home," with the kind of joy that made my chest ache in the best way. That was my real family. That was love. Messy, loud, imperfect, unconditional love. I took a deep breath, feeling the quiet strength settle inside me. A knowing that went deeper than anger, deeper than grief. It was the kind of knowing that said, "This ends here." They had made their choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. That night after I tucked Emma and Lucas into bed, I lay beside them for a while, listening to their soft, even breaths in the darkness. The glow of their nightlight cast gentle shadows across the room, little stars and moons dancing along the walls. Emma's hair fanned out across her pillow curls, tangled from a day of play, her cheek pressed into her stuffed unicorn. Lucas curled up against my side, his tiny fingers still clutching my shirt in his sleep. I watched them and felt something deep in my chest ache, but it wasn't sadness this time. It was something fiercer, stronger, like a flame that had finally found oxygen. They were everything. They were my why, my reason for every choice I had ever made, every late night, every exhausted morning, every sacrifice I never regretted. And as I watched them, their faces relaxed and peaceful in sleep, a thought came to me with absolute clarity. I would never let anyone make them feel unwanted, not even their own grandparents, especially not them. I slipped out of their room quietly and walked downstairs. Liam was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. He looked up as I entered, reading my face immediately. He set his phone aside, opening his arms, and I walked into them without a word. For a while, we just sat there in the dim glow of the living room lamp, my head resting against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. "They really said that?" he asked finally, his voice low, with disbelief. I nodded, silent tears slipping down my cheeks. He tightened his arms around me, exhaling a long, slow breath. "What do you want to do?" he asked gently. I pulled back and looked at him, feeling that quiet, fierce strength rise again in my chest. "I want to be done," I said, my voice shaking but resolute. "I want to stop pretending, stop chasing their approval." "I'm tired, Liam. I'm so tired." He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his eyes soft and full of a love so deep it almost hurt. "Then be done, baby. We don't need them. You don't need them. You have us. That's enough." I nodded, tears slipping faster now, but they felt different. Not bitter, not desperate. cleansing like the first warm rain after a long, bitter winter. In that moment, I made my decision. The threshold had been there all along, waiting for me to finally step across it. No more calls hoping for praise that never came. No more driving hours to sit at their table and feel like an outsider in my own family. No more teaching my kids that love is something you earn by being quiet enough, good enough, small enough to fit someone else's expectations. No more. That night after Liam went up to bed, I sat at the kitchen table alone, the house quiet around me. I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop and pulled up our family photos. Thanksgiving last year, Christmas morning, Emma's dance recital, Lucas's birthday party. All the moments they had missed or dismissed. All the proof that we didn't need them to be a family. I scrolled through photo after photo, tears blurring my vision, but my heart felt lighter with every passing second. Because as painful as this choice was, it was also freedom. It was finally choosing me, choosing my kids, choosing peace. They had made their choice when they showed me in no uncertain terms that my children would never be enough for them. And now, I was making mine. I closed the laptop and sat back, letting the silence of the house wrap around me like a promise. A promise that from this moment on, I would no longer waste my life trying to fit into their narrow, brittle version of love. From this moment on, I would write my own definition of family, loud, messy, unconditional, and free. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. It was strange after a night of tears and quiet resolve. I expected to feel empty, hollowed out by grief. But instead there was a quiet steadiness in my chest, a certainty. I got the kids ready for school as usual. Emma insisted on wearing her sparkly pink sneakers even though they clashed horribly with her blue leggings and unicorn sweater. Lucas refused to leave without his stuffed T-Rex tucked under his arm. As I knelt down to tie Emma's shoes, she cupped my face in her small hands. "Mama," she said solemnly, "are we going to Grandma's for Thanksgiving?" I hesitated, feeling a sharp ache twist in my chest. I forced a smile and tucked a curl behind her ear. "No, baby. We're going to have Thanksgiving here this year. Just us." Her eyes widened, then sparkled with excitement. "Can we make cinnamon rolls like Grandma's?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "We can make them even better," I whispered, kissing her forehead. That morning, as I sipped my coffee alone in the quiet kitchen, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Daniel, Mom said you're being difficult about Thanksgiving. Why do you always have to make everything so dramatic?" My chest tightened with the familiar rush of hurt and resentment. Always me, always dramatic, always the problem. Never mind what they had said. Never mind the hurt they caused. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling as I typed. "Me, did she tell you she uninvited my kids, but invited yours?" The typing bubbles appeared, then stopped, appeared again. Finally, his reply came. "Daniel, she just wants a calm dinner alley. You know how your kids can be a lot. A lot. Like they were burdens, inconveniences, disruptions to their peaceful, curated life." Something inside me snapped, and this time, it didn't break me. It steeled me. "Me? Enjoy your perfect Thanksgiving, Daniel. I won't be there." I turned off my phone before he could respond. That afternoon, Liam came home early from work, carrying bags of groceries and a bouquet of pale yellow tulips. He set them on the counter and pulled me into his arms without a word. I buried my face in his chest, breathing in his warmth, letting the safety of him ground me. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded against him. "Yeah, better than okay." He pulled back just enough to look at me. His eyes were warm, steady, full of quiet pride. "I'm proud of you," he said. Tears pricked my eyes, but this time they didn't sting. They felt clean, healing. Because here in this small, messy kitchen, I finally heard the words I had spent my life craving, not from my parents, but from the man who had chosen to love every broken and beautiful part of me. But even with Liam's steady presence, the tests kept coming. 2 days later, my phone rang again. Mom. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. I almost declined, but something in me wanted to hear what she would say. I answered, keeping my voice calm and flat. Hello. Her tone was saccharine sweet, but I could hear the edge beneath it. Hi, honey. I've been thinking about our conversation. I really hope you'll reconsider. We would love to have you and Liam here. I closed my eyes. Not the kids, though, right? She sighed as if I were exhausting her. Allie, don't be like this. It's just one dinner. You know how much Daniel's boys mean to us. There it was. The truth she never even tried to hide anymore. I clenched my jaw, feeling anger and sorrow burn through me. You've made it clear where we stand, Mom. I won't bother you again. Allie, she started, but I ended the call before she could finish. That night, Liam and I sat on the couch after the kids fell asleep, the glow of the TV flickering across his tired face as he watched me in silence. You know this isn't going to be the end of it, he said quietly. I nodded. I know. Because I could feel it too. The shift in the air. The way they had lost control of me for the first time in my life. And people like them, they didn't let go easily. But as I curled up beside Liam, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their permission to love my children fiercely and fully. I didn't need to keep sacrificing myself on the altar of their expectations. I had allies. I had tests to face. And yes, I had enemies, but not in the cartoon villain way. These were enemies wrapped in the language of family of love, with conditions of do what we say, and we'll let you belong. I closed my eyes and let the darkness settle around me, feeling the quiet certainty take root in my bones. They had made their choice, and now every day forward I would keep choosing mine. Thanksgiving morning dawned cold and bright. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the flour-dusted counters and the mixing bowls stacked in the sink. The smell of cinnamon rolls, baking in the oven filled the house, mingling with fresh coffee, and the sweet sound of Emma and Lucas's laughter as they danced around the table in their pajamas. For the first time in years, there was no rush to get dressed in stiff holiday clothes, no anxious checking of the clock to make sure we left on time. There was just us, our little family, warm and messy and loud. But beneath the peace, a storm still brewed inside me. As I poured batter onto the griddle, watching it sizzle and bubble, my phone buzzed again on the counter. Daniel. I ignored it. Moments later, another buzz, then another. Finally, with a frustrated sigh, I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked it up. Daniel, Mom says you're ignoring her calls. This is ridiculous, Allie. Why are you being so difficult? I felt my chest tighten, anger simmering just beneath my skin. Me, did she tell you why I'm not coming? Did she tell you what she said about my kids? The typing bubbles appeared, then stopped, appeared again. Daniel. She just wants a calm dinner. You know how your kids can be overwhelming. Overwhelming. Like they were some burden to be managed, some chaos to be shut out. My vision blurred with tears, but this time they burned with rage instead of sorrow. Me? They're kids, Daniel. They're her grandchildren. Daniel. Look, I get that you're upset, but cutting them off completely is extreme. They're still our parents. Still our parents. Still his parents who loved him unconditionally, who showed up to every baseball game, every award ceremony, who never forgot his kids' birthdays, who never once told him his family wasn't welcome at their table. I swallowed hard, a bitter taste rising in my throat. For so long I had tried to pretend it wasn't this bad, that their favoritism was just in my head, that if I worked harder, smiled more, stayed quiet, they'd eventually see me the way they saw him. But standing there in my kitchen pancake batter, dripping from the whisk onto the counter, I realized the truth I'd spent my entire life avoiding. It was never going to happen, because I wasn't Daniel. I would never be Daniel, and my kids would never be his kids, quiet, easy, refined. My kids were wild and honest and bright, and that was something my parents didn't want in their lives. For years I had carried the hurt like a hidden wound. Every ignored birthday invitation, every missed recital, every time they praised Daniel's wife, while offering me backhanded compliments like, "You look tired lately." Every Christmas morning when Emma unwrapped cheap art supplies, while Daniel's boys opened drones and new gaming consoles. Every Thanksgiving when my mom raved about Daniel's pumpkin pie while barely tasting mine. It was all there stacked like bricks on my chest, suffocating me under the weight of their silent message. "You're not good enough. Your kids aren't good enough." I felt something inside me shift, harden. The grief was still there, but it burned with a sharper edge now. A protective, furious love for my children that eclipsed everything else. Because if I kept letting them treat us this way, if I showed up to that dinner without Emma and Lucas smiling politely while they fawned over Daniel's family, what was I teaching my kids? That they had to shrink themselves to be worthy of love. That they had to become quiet, easy, refined to be accepted. That being themselves was wrong. No. No. I tossed the whisk into the sink with a loud clatter, the sound echoing in the quiet kitchen. Liam looked up from where he was helping Lucas stack pancakes on a plate. His eyes met mine, calm and steady. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, wiping a tear from my cheek. "Yeah, I am." Because in that moment I knew this wasn't just about Thanksgiving. This was about every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday, every normal Tuesday morning when I had let them make me feel like I was less. This was about my children growing up knowing they were enough exactly as they were. Loud, messy, imperfect, bright. Enough. I picked up my phone again and typed out one final message to Daniel. "Me. Enjoy your dinner. Tell Mom and Dad they won't be hearing from me again." Before he could reply, I silenced my phone and turned it off. Then I walked back to the stove, flipped the pancakes onto a plate, and carried them to the table where Emma and Lucas were waiting, with eager eyes and syrupy grins. "Who's ready for Thanksgiving breakfast?" I asked, forcing a smile through the tears pooling in my eyes. Lucas threw his arms in the air. "Me, Mama." Me, Emma giggled, already drenching her pancakes in maple syrup. I sat down beside them, feeling Liam's warm hand settle on my back, grounding me. This was my real family, and I would fight to protect their joy from anyone, even the people who shared my blood, especially them. For the next few days, the silence was deafening. No calls from Mom, no texts from Daniel, no guilt-tripping voicemails or backhanded apologies. Just silence. And at first it felt like freedom, like the heavy chains I'd carried for so long had finally fallen away. Thanksgiving passed quietly. Liam and I spent the day with Emma and Lucas baking cinnamon rolls from scratch, watching the parade on TV, building a blanket fort in the living room. As I watched them play, their giggles echoing through the house, I felt something loosen in my chest, a tension I hadn't even realized I was holding. Maybe I thought this was it. Maybe they'd finally understood I was done. Maybe they'd finally let me go. But I underestimated them. Because a few days later, as I was folding laundry in the bedroom, my phone buzzed with a new text. "Daniel again. Daniel, Mom, and Dad are really upset. Why are you ignoring them?" I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Me. Because they told me my kids weren't welcome in their home. Because they made their choice, and now I'm making mine. His reply came quickly. Daniel. You're blowing this out of proportion, Allie. They just wanted a calm dinner. You know how your kids can be. I felt rage flare hot in my chest. But before I could respond, my phone rang. Mom. For a moment, I considered ignoring it again. But something in me, maybe anger, maybe curiosity, made me swipe to answer. What do you want, Mom? Her voice was sharp brittle. Allie, did you cancel the credit card? I blinked, caught off guard. What are you talking about? The card we've been using for groceries, she snapped. It was declined this morning. A cold realization spread through me. The credit card. The one I'd added them on 2 years ago when Dad had surgery and money was tight. I'd meant to remove them after a few months, but life got busy, and they never reminded me. And I forgot. Or maybe I didn't want to face it, but now I saw it clearly for what it was. My credit card, I said quietly. You mean the one in my name that you've been using without asking for years? Oh, don't be so dramatic, Allie, she scoffed. We raised you. The least you can do is support us now. I felt something inside me snap. Years of resentment, pain, and humiliation burned hot in my chest. Support you. My voice shook dangerously calm. After everything. After telling me my kids aren't welcome at your table, you still expect me to pay for your groceries? You're overreacting, she said, her voice icy now. It's just money, Allie. No, I whispered. It's so much more than that. Because it wasn't just about money. It was about the control, the entitlement, the way they believed they owned me, my time, my love, my wallet, simply because they were my parents. Her voice turned sharp final. You're making a mistake. You'll regret this. I laughed, cold and bitter. No, Mom. For the first time, I think I'm finally making the right choice. And I hung up. I stood there in my bedroom. The afternoon light slanting across the carpet, my heart racing so hard, it hurt. My hands trembled as I set the phone down on top of the laundry basket. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the folded towels and tiny socks, the mundane evidence of my real life. The life I built with Liam. The life I built with love. The life I refused to let them poison any longer. I walked out into the hallway feeling a clarity I'd never known before. Emma was in her room drawing dragons in pink and gold crayons. Lucas sat at her feet lining up his toy cars with intense focus. Liam looked up from his laptop as I entered, reading the expression on my face instantly. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded. Yeah. I think I finally am. Because in that moment I realized this wasn't just a fight about Thanksgiving. This was my final battle, my ordeal. The moment I faced everything I had feared losing, their approval, their love, their acceptance, and chose to walk away anyway. It hurt. God, it hurt. But underneath the pain there was something stronger, something deeper, something unbreakable. Freedom. For the first time in as long as I could remember, the house felt peaceful. Not quiet, never quiet. Not with Emma belting out Taylor Swift songs from her bedroom, and Lucas roaring like a dinosaur as he crashed his toy trucks into the couch cushions. But peaceful. The kind of peace that hummed deep in my chest, filling all the hollow places their approval used to occupy. The days after that final call were strange. Lighter somehow, but tinged with grief, like stepping out of a dark room into the morning sun, warm and liberating, but forcing you to squint as your eyes adjust to a world you'd forgotten existed. I spent my mornings making pancakes with the kids, Lucas clinging to my legs as I flipped them onto his plate. Emma helped me braid her wild curls before school, chattering about dragons and princesses and the galaxy she was creating in her sketchbook. Liam kissed my forehead before work, lingering for a moment longer than usual, as if silently telling me I see you. I'm proud of you. And each night when the kids were asleep and the house was finally still, I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket staring at the flickering candle on the coffee table, feeling both the loss and the relief settle inside me. Because freedom has a price, and mine was this no more pretending. No more forced smiles at holiday dinners where my kids were treated like afterthoughts. No more phone calls spent swallowing anger until it turned into guilt. No more bending myself backwards for their scraps of love. But it also meant letting go of something I'd spent my whole life chasing, the idea that maybe one day they'd love me the way I wanted to be loved, the way they loved Daniel, the way I loved my kids, fully, fiercely, without conditions. That dream was gone now, and with its loss came a grief so sharp it stole my breath some nights, leaving me clutching my pillow in the dark, tears soaking the fabric, as Liam held me close and whispered, "It's okay. Let it go." But each time I let it go, it hurt a little less. Each time I breathed through the ache, I felt something stronger rise in its place. Pride. Because I had done what I never thought I could. I chose my kids over their approval. I chose myself. I stood up and said, "Enough." And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't just existing. I was living, on my own terms. Thanksgiving came and went. Christmas too. The kids never asked why Grandma and Grandpa didn't call. Emma was too busy designing costumes for her dolls. Lucas too busy learning new dinosaur facts to care. And Liam, sweet, steady Liam, filled every silent space with so much love. There was no room left for regret. One evening, as we sat on the couch sipping hot chocolate after the kids went to bed, he turned to me with a soft smile. "Do you miss them?" he asked. I stared into my mug for a moment, watching the steam curl upward. "Did I? I miss who I wanted them to be," I said finally. "I miss the idea of them." He nodded, reaching over to lace his fingers through mine. "But I don't miss feeling small," I whispered. "I don't miss feeling like I'm never enough." And that was the truth. That was my reward. Because yes, I had lost my parents. But in their place, I gained something far more precious: peace, self-respect, the knowledge that I would never again teach my children to settle for love that came with strings attached. That night, I tucked Emma into bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. She stirred sleepily, her eyes fluttering open. "Mommy," she mumbled, her voice heavy with dreams. "Do you love me even when I'm loud, my chest clenched, tears springing to my eyes? Especially when you're loud, baby," I whispered, kissing her cheek. "Especially then." And as I closed her door and walked back down the hallway, I felt it settle inside me, the quiet certainty that no matter what I had lost, I had gained something worth far more. I had gained the freedom to love my children exactly as they are, and I had gained the strength to never let anyone take that from them, or from me. For a few weeks there was silence. Christmas passed in a blur of twinkling lights and flour-dusted counters as Emma and Lucas helped me bake cookies for Santa. Liam strung colorful lights across the porch, his breath fogging in the freezing air, grinning like a little boy, each time a strand flickered to life. We woke up Christmas morning to the kids squealing over their gifts, wrapping paper flying like confetti. And for the first time in years, there was no tightness in my chest, no undercurrent of dread about what my parents might think, or whether my kids' excitement was too loud, too messy, too much. It was peaceful, blissful even. But peace never lasts when it comes to people like them. Because a week after New Year's, I came home from picking up the kids at school to find Liam standing in the kitchen, a letter clutched in his hand, his jaw tight. "What is it?" I asked, instantly on edge. He handed it to me wordlessly. I tore it open, scanning the words printed neatly on expensive ivory paper. It was from my parents' lawyer. My vision blurred as I read the contents, once then twice, trying to make sense of it. They were demanding reimbursement for years of emotional and financial support, itemized like a grocery list: food, clothes, medical bills, extracurricular activities. Everything they had ever spent on me from birth to 18 tallied up to nearly $80,000. At the bottom, in neat bold font, payment expected within 30 days to avoid legal action. My knees gave out, and I sank into the kitchen chair, the paper trembling in my hands. Liam knelt beside me, his eyes dark with anger. "They can't be serious," he said. But as I read the letter again, feeling nausea rise in my throat, I knew they were. Because to them, love had always been transactional, conditional, a debt I could never fully repay. This wasn't about money. It was about punishing me, about yanking the leash they'd kept wrapped around my throat my whole life, trying to remind me that even now, even after I had broken free, they still owned me. The next morning, my phone rang. "Daniel." I answered, too tired to fight. "What is wrong with you, Allie?" he snapped. "Mom is devastated. Dad is furious. Why are you making this so difficult?" I let out a hollow laugh, tears burning in my eyes. "Did they tell you they're suing me for my own childhood, Daniel?" He paused. I could hear his shaky breath. They're hurting. You've cut them off. They feel abandoned. They feel abandoned," I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. "They told me my kids weren't welcome at their table, Daniel. They've been using my credit card for years behind my back, and now they're billing me for existing." He sighed heavily. "Look, maybe if you just apologize, they'll drop it." Something inside me broke completely then. The final frayed thread of hope snapped. "I'm not apologizing for protecting my kids," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I'm not apologizing for choosing myself for once." "Then don't expect them to forgive you," he snapped. I laughed bitterly. "I don't need their forgiveness. I need them out of my life." And with that, I hung up. That afternoon, I called their lawyer myself. My voice didn't shake as I said, "Tell my parents if they want to take me to court for the cost of raising their own child, I'll be there. With every text, every voicemail, every bank statement from the credit card they used without permission. And I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who they are." There was silence on the other end before the lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly. "I'll relay the message." I hung up and exhaled shakily, feeling Liam's arms wrap around my shoulders from behind. He pressed his lips to my temple. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. For the first time in my life, I believed it, because this was my road back, not to them, but to myself. Each step painful, each confrontation ripping open wounds I thought had scarred over. But with every word spoken, every boundary set, I felt something shift inside me. I was done playing their game, and for the first time ever, I realized they couldn't hurt me anymore. Spring arrived quietly that year. The first warm breeze drifted through the open kitchen window as I stood rinsing strawberries at the sink. Outside, the grass was beginning to green, dotted with tiny wildflowers Emma insisted on picking for her bedroom vase. Lucas raced across the yard in his rain boots, chasing imaginary dragons with his plastic sword clutched tight in his chubby hand. And as I watched them, their hair haloed by the afternoon sun, their laughter rising clear and unburdened into the blue sky, I realized something. I felt light, truly light. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the next blow, the next insult, hidden in false sweetness, the next moment of rejection, to slice open old wounds. The ache was still there, of course. Grief doesn't vanish. But it had settled into something softer now. Something almost peaceful. A few weeks after I called their lawyer, the official letter arrived in the mail. Liam handed it to me as I sipped my coffee on the porch, his expression unreadable. I opened it with steady hands, my heart beating calmly in my chest. The words were short, almost curt. Due to lack of legal standing, your parents are dropping the reimbursement claim. Further contact will cease effective immediately. That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just the end. I set the letter down on the table, staring out at the yard, where Emma was braiding dandelions into Lucas's hair as he roared like a lion. Liam reached out and took my hand, squeezing it gently. "How do you feel?" he asked. I thought about it for a moment. I thought about the little girl inside me who had spent her entire life trying to be good enough, the teenager who twisted herself into shapes that didn't fit just to hear, "We're proud of you," the young mother who prayed her parents would finally love her children as they were. And then I thought about the woman sitting here now. Calm, whole, free. "I feel clean," I said finally. "Like I've been carrying their shadows my entire life, and now I can finally stand in the sun." He smiled softly, brushing a thumb over my knuckles. "You're amazing, you know that." Tears pricked my eyes, but they didn't fall. I didn't need them to, because the ache wasn't breaking me anymore. It was reminding me who I was. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at my desk with my journal open pen poised above the page. For years, I had filled those pages with desperate words. How do I make them love me? What am I doing wrong? How can I fix this? But tonight, I wrote something different. They don't get to define me anymore. I closed the journal, exhaling shakily, as the truth settled deeper into my bones. I wasn't the same woman who had stood trembling in her kitchen on Thanksgiving morning, begging her mother to accept her children. That version of me was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who had faced every fear, every buried truth, every wound festering in darkness, and walked out the other side, stronger. Someone who didn't just survive her parents' rejection, but thrived beyond it. Someone who finally understood that love isn't something to be earned. It's something to be given freely. And if it comes with conditions, it isn't love at all. The next morning, as the kids ate pancakes shaped like dinosaurs and Liam packed their lunches for school, Emma looked up at me with syrup smeared across her cheek. "Mama," she said through a mouthful of pancake, "when I grow up, I want to be just like you." My breath caught tears burning behind my eyes. "Why's that baby?" She smiled wide, her front teeth, missing eyes shining with certainty. "Because you're brave." And in that moment, I realized this was my resurrection. Not a flashy cinematic triumph, but something deeper, quieter, stronger. The knowledge that I had become the mother I always needed, the mother my kids deserved. And no matter what my parents thought, no matter how they tried to twist my worth into something small and repayable, I knew one unbreakable truth: I was enough. I had always been enough. And now I would spend the rest of my life making sure my children never doubted that they were too. Spring melted into early summer, and life settled into a new kind of normal. The mornings were still chaotic, Lucas refusing to wear anything but his superhero pajamas to preschool Emma taking forever to decide which hair clips matched her mood that day. Liam kissed me goodbye on his way out the door. Coffee mug in one hand, laptop bag slung over his shoulder, always with that same soft smile that told me I've got you. I spent my days working from the kitchen table, the window open, to let in the warm breeze and bird song, answering emails in between, folding tiny t-shirts and picking up scattered crayons. In the evenings, we ate dinner together, Sometimes at the table, sometimes on a picnic blanket in the yard. Lucas smearing barbecue sauce across his cheeks while Emma read her newest poem aloud, her voice fierce and bright. One Sunday afternoon as I sat on the porch, with a glass of lemonade watching Liam help Lucas build a birdhouse, while Emma braided wildflowers into her hair, I realized something so simple it almost made me laugh. This was it. This was family. Not the curated perfection my parents clung to, but something real, something alive. And for the first time in my life, I felt grateful they had pushed me away. Because if they had dangled just enough acceptance to keep me crawling back, I might never have seen the truth. Their love had always come with conditions. Their approval had always been a currency I could never quite afford. And I had spent my entire life bankrupting myself to buy it. But I didn't need it. I never did. That was the elixir I returned with from this long, brutal journey. The unbreakable truth that love is not something to earn. It is something to give freely, without fear or condition. I thought about my children, Emma fierce and creative and loud, unashamed of her bigness in a world that often asked girls like her to be small. Lucas messy and wild and sweet, hugging strangers at the grocery store because he hadn't learned yet that some people didn't deserve that kind of open-hearted love. I thought about how they saw me, not as the failure my parents tried to mold me into, but as Mama. Strong, safe, enough, always enough. That night after the kids were asleep, I climbed into bed beside Liam and curled into his warmth. He kissed the top of my head and murmured half asleep, "You okay?" I smiled into his chest, breathing in the quiet scent of him, soap and cedar and safety. "I'm better than okay," I whispered, because I had finally returned from the darkest part of myself, with the treasure I never knew. I was seeking the knowledge that my worth was never theirs to give. It was mine all along. And as I drifted to sleep, listening to the hum of the summer night outside our window, I promised myself and my children that I would spend every day forward, proving it. Not to them, not to the world, but to us. Because that's what real family is. Not people who demand your silence in exchange for scraps of love, but the people who sit with you in your loudest, messiest, truest self and love you harder for it. That was my elixir, my freedom, my peace, and finally, my home.